What's up, everybody? Welcome back. Thank you so much for taking the time to hang out. Today we're talking about the brand new anamorphic lens by Sandmarc. Let's go. Now, for a while, I've been saying that I'm a big fan of the whole Sandmarc situation because their lenses mount very easily on a slim and very light case. And this is super important, at least for me, because I love to use these lenses with my smartphone on gimbals. So not all of the gimbals are able to withstand a hard capacity as far as payload goes. So this is really useful when I compare with other lenses in the industry. Some of them are amazing, but often the case tends to be a little bit bulky, a little bit heavier, and that's great. But for my personal preference, I really like the thin and light case that Sandmarc provides. Now, the Sandmarc lens will set you back $159 directly from the Sandmarc website. Links is down in the description, and the whole package includes the lens, the iPhone case, clip-on mount for universal fit. We can actually use this on different phones, not only iPhones, but with the case, it's definitely going to be a lot easier and more secure. And the package also includes a lens cap for the front and the back of the lens. I personally think this is fantastic value because you get all that for $159. When you compare other anamorphic lenses on the industry, it pretty much sets you back at around $150 all the way up to $200 when you factor in the case and the lens itself. Going down the things that I really enjoy about this lens, number one being you can adjust the anamorphic portion without a key. Other lenses that I've had, like the anamorphic lens from Moment, though it's an amazing lens, it requires that little key to be able to rotate the orientation of the anamorphic lens itself and the part that connects to the case. And for the most part, this is not a big deal, but the Sandmarc anamorphic lens gives you that awesome fluid adjustment without a key, which is really useful if you're going from phone to phone. Maybe you're trying to record in underslung mode with a gimbal. Maybe you're using the universal mount to fit this on an Android device that the camera's positioned in the opposite direction. And honestly, I personally lost already the key that came with my Moment lens, so definitely I'm a big fan of that. Now, just a heads up, make sure before you start recording that you take a quick look at your screen to make sure that the orientation of the lens itself is in proper position. If not, things could be tilted to the left or to the right if your lens is not properly adjusted. So make sure before you start hitting the record button that the orientation of the lens relative to your camera position is fully centered with the mark above the lens. That way you don't get some weird perspective distortion. Another fantastic thing that I discovered while using the anamorphic lens on the daily was the fact that this is actually wider than the Moment anamorphic lens. And this is actually a really good thing in my opinion. The fact that you get a little bit wider frame means that if you're using electronic image stabilization with the native camera app, or let's say using Filmic Pro to de-squeeze your footage, you're going to have a little bit higher ceiling. So even if you implement electronic image stabilization, you're still going to have relatively close to or similar to the Moment anamorphic lens. So I'm a really big fan of that. When you don't have electronic image stabilization turned on your application, in this case I was using Filmic Pro, you actually get a lot more in the frame. We're talking significant amount left and right. If you take a closer look in this comparison, you can see that the Sandmarc actually shows a little bit more on the top right and the bottom left of the frame compared to the Moment. And this is definitely welcome. The more of a focal length flexibility, the better. You don't notice a whole lot of distortion in the center of the frame, and on the sides you're definitely going to notice a little bit of a blur and a little bit of a fade in terms of like the detail, and it's not going to be as sharp on the sides. But that's typically how the anamorphic lenses will perform overall, not only on smartphones, but also on cinema rigs. Now, we cannot talk about the anamorphic lens without talking about Filmic Pro. Pro. Filmic Pro is my favorite application for filmmaking on the go on your smartphone. I have it on my Samsung Galaxy S10, I have it on my Pixel 3a, Pixel 3 XL, and of course my iPhone. And the reason why I like Filmic Pro so much is because on top of giving you amazing features and amazing customizations regarding your shots and your shutter speed, ISO, a lot of tools for filmmaking, it does give you a necessary feature for anamorphic lenses and other lenses in general. In this case, it's the native D-Squeeze anamorphic lens toggle. And what this toggle is going to do is going to de-squeeze your footage. If you were just to simply attach your lens and leverage, let's say, the native camera app, everybody's going to look very squeezed and things will be very tall. But with this feature turned on, automatically Filmic Pro will stretch everything back to the way it's supposed to look. And when you do this, you're naturally going to have that awesome letterboxing that gives you a little bit more legit cinematic look without having to add them in post, whether you're using PNG bars or whether you're using any presets or plugins in your editing software. So this is really useful because now when you import your footage straight into your video editing software, you don't have to worry about de-squeezing everything. This is awesome. Everything's ready to go, especially if you're editing on mobile on applications like LumaFusion. This just allows you to just simply import your footage to your timeline and just start editing just like if it was a regular clip. Now you can also do this on your video editing software, but I personally prefer to do it on the fly. Now another thing I recommend while on Filmic Pro is to try their color profiles. I personally love to film on either flat or Vlog, because this allows you to have a little bit more dynamic range in your footage. This will give you a little bit more flexibility when you're trying to color grade your footage or applying LUTs in Final Cut, Premiere, or any software. Now, I was very attracted to anamorphic lens because of the sweet lens flares. Honestly, I'm not gonna lie, I'm a fan. I really enjoy the look of this lens and the lens flares. And I noticed that when I was comparing this versus, let's say, the anamorphic lens that Moment Lenses makes, these ones seem a little bit more subtle and carry a little bit less saturation in the blues. So it was kind of nice. It was subtle. When I did a little comparison here in the room, I noticed that the lens flares in the Moment Lens were very bold and they look great. But I personally like how subtle the Sandmarc ones are. It's not over the top, but they're there. Now, the one thing that I also noticed when I was testing both lens flares indoors is that when you get super close to the light source in the Sandmarc Anamorphic Lens, for some reason, the flares are actually separated from the light source. This is not a bad thing in my opinion, but I just figured I'd let you know and you make that decision for yourself. Now, for certain shots in this video, I leveraged the Moza Mini-MI smartphone gimbal, and this is one of my favorite gimbals to use with smartphone lenses because number one, this gimbal supports 300 grams of payload. So everything that you've seen regarding motion shots, slider shots, or jib shots, it was all done with the Moza Mini-MI and no extra counterweight. I used the iPhone XS Max with the Sandmarc case and the anamorphic lens, and it handled it like a champ. And also that gimbal has wireless charging. So this is huge because when you're using Filmic Pro on Filmic Extreme, which is 120 megabit per second video at 4K 60 frames per second, so you can capture some sick motion, your battery will drain. Not to mention, if you're using any color profiles, Filmic Pro does a frame-by-frame analysis to give you better dynamic range, and your battery will definitely go down. So this gimbal is definitely one of my favorite ones to use with lenses because I can do all that and charge at the same time. Overall, I love the build quality of this lens. It's a little bit bigger, it's a little bit chunkier, it's hefty but not heavy, and I love it. The only thing to keep your eye on would be that orientation. It's very, very important because I had some clips that I couldn't leverage for this video because I forgot to properly adjust the lens, since it doesn't retain that position. Any movement, or if you put it in your pocket, if you just simply hold the phone and your finger touches the lens, you might change its orientation on the fly. So keep your eye on the screen before you hit record, make sure everything is where it needs to be. But other than that, I am incredibly impressed with Sandmarc, just the overall quality of the footage and the lens itself. But I want to know what you think. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. If you have any questions or suggestions, drop them down there so we can continue to create relevant content for you. Once again, thank you so much for sharing your time with me. I'll catch you on the next one.